Good morning, afternoon and evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the General Secretary of Award for Travel, Evora Forum. I am very pleased to welcome you everywhere you are. First of all, we apologize to having to postpone Award for Travel, Evora Forum due to the acceleration of the second wave of the pandemic in Europe and the restrictions decided by several countries. But the pandemic will not get the better of our industries to determination to take up the challenge of transformation. This virtual event with top-level speakers is to provide you a teaser of the forum that will take place in May 10th and 11th, 2021 in the beautiful, inspiring and prestigious University of Évora, Portugal. I want to thank warmly our Portuguese partners, Turismo de Portugal, Alentejo Region, Évora City and University, and more particularly, Mrs. Rita Marques, Secretary of State for Tourism. Their support and determination are exceptional. Thank you, Madam. Our second premium partner is the Global Travel and Tourism Resilience Council with Daniela Wagner, who is going to join me for the conclusion, and Laurie Myers, who is welcoming our speakers while I'm speaking with all of you. I can say now we belong to the same family. I want also to warmly thank our partner all over the world that joined Award for Travel with a special appreciation to UNWTO and WTTC. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General Zurab Pololikashvili. Thank you, Madam President Gloria Guevara. But also I'm pleased to mention I'm pleased to mention the support of the international travel organizations, ETC, ECTA, PATA, ATA, LATA, Nextour, and all the companies, associations, and academics involved in contributing their time and thought leadership for this great cause, transforming travel and tourism for good of humanity. We must consider that travel bashing endangers the very idea of travel, while at the same time, travel activities also have a negative impact through their normal courses of business. That impact endangers human activities, nature, and the planet. It is mandatory, even urgent, we address these dangers. Award for Travel has one purpose: to transform travel and preserve it, and globally and locally, while at the same time working for the benefit of both humanity and the planet. We were ready to welcome in Évora over 1,000 delegates, 350 in person, 120 speakers. So I want to thank them very well for their availability and commitment. We shall see everyone in Évora in May. Today, over 1,500 have registered for this special event from 56 countries. Thank you and welcome. I'm honored to welcome today's prestigious speakers and moderators who have agreed to give us a taste of what will be in Award for Travel Évora Forum in May. They will provide their insight and experience on leadership, courage and perseverance that are mandatory in these more than difficult times. Believe me, I know the difficulty we all have in persevering, but we have no other choice. We must show the resilience of travel and tourism industry. We have a lot of questions to ask and fears to overcome. We need awareness, temerity and determination. The good news is travel is in the reptilian brain of each human being, pushing all of us to discover more and more, and this is one of our better innate abilities. Now, I am more than happy to welcome the Secretary of State for Tourism for Portugal, Rita Marques. Of course, Mrs. Secretary of State, we all would like to be in Évora today, but we will be patient, and we have to be patient nowadays. We shall enjoy Évora, beauty in the spring. Let's keep that in our minds. The blossoms of spring in Évora will be the symbol of travel and tourism opening at last. Mrs. Secretary of State, Rita Marques.
Merci bien, Christian. Dear Christian, thank you so much for your very kind words. You are completely right. So basically, we will be waiting for you for sure in Évora. For now, we have to be safe, and that's why we need to be compliant with all the rules. So, but we'll have the time. You will have the time to be together on site in Évora in a very near future. I would like to congratulate all the ones that are with us today off site. Let me start to greet Gloria Guevara, President and CEO of the World Travel and Tourism Council. My dear friend, you have been, a wonderful leader in these very tough times for tourism. Your work has been very inspirational to all of us, so thank you so much. And I hopefully will be together very soon in Évora or in other event. So please, let's stay in touch. Let's work together for the sake of our tourism and for the sake of all of us. Dear Secretary General, UNWTO, Zurab Pololikashvili, dear friend Zurab, it's always a pleasure to be with you. We have been working together very hard with UNWTO, and your read some of the speakers, namely Your Highness Balala, Minister of Tourism and Wildlife from Kenya. I know that you will be around in a panel about leadership and the times of COVID-19. So thank you, Balala, for staying with us. And also thank you, Edmond Barlet, Minister of Tourism of Jamaica. I will be around to listen what you have to tell us. I guess we have to, all of us have to learn this art of leading while trying to break out the COVID grip. And also, last but not least, dear Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, the Secretary of State for Tourism in France. I hope to see you very soon here in Portugal. So I will be eager to listen to you during the panel that comes at 10:55. And of course, I want to greet the organization and all of you in the team that have put together. I know that it was not hard, that has been very hard, that have put together this event. And hopefully we'll have, as you said, very much that you said in the beginning, Christian, we'll have the chance to stay and to meet and to celebrate good moments in Évora very soon. My message to you is quite straightforward. Before the pandemic hit us, we were working very hard here in Portugal, making tourism a force for good. And of course, times are complicated, times are quite harsh at this stake of the day, at this stake of the year. But we cannot lose our faith in the recovery of tourism, and we will not give up to bring tourism again, to revive tourism and to work towards tourism recovery. And so I'm glad to see that Europe has made very good progress on that very recently. There is still a long way, of course, but international coordination is getting better. Although we have still some challenges ahead, we are now working in international coordination in a broader way, including with Americas, with Asia, with Africa, and so on. But we have to go further. So for the moment, for the present, we have to work together, united, to reinforce cooperation in this matter at the global level, to allow international travel to resume safely as soon as we can. At the country level, Portugal has working very hard, and I would like very much to share with you some of our initiatives that show our commitment to the tourism recovery, and that can hopefully be inspirational to all of you. Very recently, Portugal has just received Europe's Leading Destination Award, and several of our regions and enterprises have also received several awards. And the objective is quite clear. We want to get back on track pursuing the goals of Tourism Strategy 2027. And our ambition is quite clear, it's quite straightforward. Portugal needs or will assume a leadership position in tourism of the future. And we have clear objectives in terms of economic, environmental, and social sustainability for that. Very recently, we reinforced our commitment to sustainability through the launch of the Tourism Sustainable 2030 initiative. And this plan includes over 60 actions aligned with 4 strategic axes. The first one is all about structuring a sustainable offer, the tourism offer. The second pillar is relates with training. It's for us very important to qualify all the agents that work in the tourism industry. And here in Portugal, we are pretty much 400,000 people working in the tourism industry. So we need to strengthen our programs, our qualification programs in order to qualify these people and make them alert for the tourism for tomorrow, the tourism's tomorrow trends. And also the third pillar is about promoting Portugal as a sustainable destination. But there is a fourth pillar, quite important to all of us, that deals with the sector's sustainability metrics. So we cannot manage what we cannot know, what we cannot measure. So our fourth pillar relates with monitoring the sector's sustainability metrics. And so for us, it's quite straightforward. So we have put together this plan that has a number of actions that includes, for instance, think tanks for innovation in tourism along several verticals, a digital sustainable tool for tourism, basically that deals with an online tool that will allow firms to analyze their level of maturity regarding sustainability. We also have what we call the Future Lab hotels that basically relies on an innovation program consisting in a lot of pilots and innovation trials that could give us a sense of what would be a future hotel, a hotel that we cannot imagine right now, but we can work on that for sure. So basically, my main message to you is that we need to survive. Yes, of course, we need to survive. We must work hard to survive. But most important, we need to work hard to craft the future for tomorrow. And I do believe that sustainability, is one of the pillars that we have to address. And that's why green technology for tourism, health and wellness tourism, and clean and safe tourism are all the trends that we can work together in a very articulated way. So please be around. Tourism in Portugal will recover for sure. In Europe will recover. In the world will recover. And we all need to show our role as a source of economic growth, environmental sustainability, and social cohesion. And of course, we are ready to lead the way. So thank you so much for being with us. And back to you, Christian.
Thank you, Rita, Mrs. Secretary of State. We are aware that Portugal is a beacon of light for the transformation of tourism in the months and years to come. We hear you when you say that our industry had the opportunity to recover and at the same time to overcome these times, to renew. It is quite in line with the comments from the UNWTO Secretary General. Unfortunately, the Secretary General, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili, is not able to be live with us this morning due to his heavy travel schedule, which isn't easy to do nowadays. Layovers, rerouting, and more layovers. However, he has sent us a message with a short video to encourage a word for travel and the Portuguese initiatives. And he wants to highlight the next steps for tourism to recover through transformation. Mr. Secretary General.
Dear Rita Marques, Secretary of State for Tourism of Portugal, thank you for your vision and leadership. Hard times show who the great leaders are, and you are an example of just that. Today's event and the launch of the Sustainable Tourism Plan 2023 is another example of your vision for the sector. A more sustainable, inclusive sector. A sector fully in line with the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals. Queridos amigos, dear friends, bom dia. It's a great to address you all on this occasion. As we join forces to restart tourism, we must make sure that the benefits are shared by all, and that our recovery leads us to reduce our emissions and our impact on planet and societies. While protecting jobs must be a priority, this is also a chance for lasting transformation. Embracing innovation will help us build more resilient communities and businesses. It will also help us create more and new opportunities, including in rural communities and for women and youth. It is an unprecedented chance to transform tourism relationship with nature, climate and the economy. Indeed, as the ultimate cross-cutting sector, tourism contributes directly and or indirectly to all the SDGs. However, right now, this is under threat. As our dear Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, it is imperative that we rebuild the tourism sector in a safe, equitable and climate-friendly manner and ensure tourism regains its position as a provider of decent jobs, stable incomes and the protection of our cultural and natural heritage. Dear friends, as the motto of Portugal's new strategy says, more than a challenge. This is the way. As the UN agency responsible for tourism, you can count on us to follow this road together. I wish you all a great event. Obrigado.
Thank you, Zurab, Mr. Secretary General. It is more than clear that we have to learn to live, I should say travel, with this pandemic. Adaptation is key, as is awareness. Gloria, Guevara, President and CEO of the WTTC, I am more than happy and honored to welcome you. You are kind enough to give us an overview of the current global situation. Of course, the issues are challenging. We all but your leadership at this time of crisis is imperative to pull the industry forward through either stimulating suggestions and informations. The transformation we demand is like having to climb Everest. Gloria, Guevara.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for having me. Hope you can hear me okay. Greetings from London. First of all, let me thank the organizers, Our for Travel, for bringing us together. And very especially my friend Rita also for her leadership, because Portugal is always leading the way in many areas. And this coordination is crucial for the recovery of our sector. I have a presentation, if we would like to share that, please. And I would like also to recognize all the different excellencies, ministers that they are joining us today. And as I say, the organizers for putting together this important event. Let me give you a perspective of what we see this recovery. If we go to the next slide, please, and what's coming and the challenges ahead. You're all very familiar with WTTC. We have a little bit over 200 CEOs from around the world, very global presence, and we're very concerned of the situation and trying to work together as the private sector to recover faster and weather this very painful storm. Europe is a very important region for us, but we have presence, as you know, globally, and we represent every single industry. If we go to the next slide, please. This is the numbers from last year. And as you will see here in the chart below, the gray line is the economy in the world. The green one is travel and tourism. For 9 years, we had outpaced the growth of the economy. And of course, last year was not the exception, where we grew 3.5 versus 2.5. 40% more was the growth of travel and tourism. 10% of the global GDP, that was our contribution. 330 million jobs around the world, 1 in 10. And from all the jobs that created, it was 1 out of 4 that the contribution from travel and tourism. Portugal, for instance, was a great example of one of the top performers last year, with other countries from around the world where we had a fantastic year. And it's quite challenging what we see right now with this unprecedented situation. Besides doing research for 30 years at WTTC, where we analyzed 185 countries around the world with exactly the same methodology, looking at direct, indirect, and total, we also analyzed the impact of this crisis. If we go to the next slide, you will see our last numbers. We just released these numbers this week. We started identifying the impact to the pandemic with, it was going to be 50 million jobs, then it was 100. Unfortunately, currently, the number is higher, and that's 142 million jobs globally have been affected. That's why I celebrate this type of events, because we need to work together. We need to get together to recover all those jobs already impacted. $3.8 trillion or $3,800 billion. And the challenge is, as you can see there, is if we continue the path that we have right now, that number can grow to a worse number that is 174. Based on our previous forecast, that number was going to be 197, now has been reduced to 174. And the reason is because we have seen some domestic recovery in some countries, which is good news, but again, not enough. Domestic is still down 33% average globally, but international is the key that is down 65%. So we need to work together to resume international travel. And as Christian mentioned, we cannot wait for a vaccine. We need to coexist with this virus. If we move to the next slide, please. These charts are very important, and I use them a lot because if you see in the top left side, this is the last 20 years of the economy. That's the white line. I don't know if you can see it. And the green one is travel and tourism GDP. The blue bars are jobs. That's the world in the last 20 years. There are two situations, two global crises that we had that impacted our sector. The first one was 9/11 in the top left, and then the 2000 financial crisis. And the difference is that in one, we were able to work together, public and private sector, and also among governments, and we were able to recover in a V shape, as you can see there in the financial crisis. We recovered in 18 months, which was amazing. However, when you look at the 9/11, that was not the case. We worked in silos, we didn't work together, public and private sector, and we didn't work together among governments. And it took longer also to recover the trust from the travelers. And that's why you see that it was a U-shaped recovery. It was longer. It was painful, 3 to 4 years. Top right, that's the G20. And then the bottom is the outbreak that China suffered, which is SARS in 2003. And despite that they didn't have a vaccine, they were able to recover pretty fast. So the lesson is that we can recover from outbreaks pretty fast as long as we work together. If we go to the next slide, so we emphasize all the time at WTTC, it is crucial not to make the same mistakes that we made in the past and learn from our experience. And that's why we came up with these 4 principles that we have been talking. International coordination or coordination among countries is key. So that's what we celebrate. The EU has been very successful of putting forward some recommendations. That's excellent. Same thing with the G20. We encourage UNWTO to continue doing that international coordinations and help us in that regard, because this is very much needed. But for reopening borders, that's crucial. We also need to look at the experience and including the travel experience, the testing component, so that we can remove the quarantines. If I want to travel to some countries because I'm in London on my way back, unfortunately, we have quarantines. And this is not the only country. We have a lot of countries like that. And we believe that testing can help us to replace the quarantines. And there is a lot of work right now going on, not only in the UK, but in other countries in that regard. Once the vaccine is available, after the vaccine, we just need to have the certificate for that. And then, of course, the protocols, very important. If we move to the next slide, and the support from the governments, that has been amazing, especially in Europe and other parts of the world, supporting the workers and supporting, of course, the SMEs and the companies impacted with liquidity. If we move to the next slide, please, you will see that the protocols are very important. Portugal was one of the first countries in the world to establish protocols. So far, we have recognized in WTTC more than 145 countries and destinations around the world because their protocols are at the same level than the global private sector. Their protocols are at the highest level, because we produce those protocols based in the knowledge that we have. Our hotels offer rooms, for instance, to doctors and nurses during the worst part of the outbreak, and they were able to maintain those installations COVID-free. So the end goal for the protocols is to offer the same experience to the travelers around the world. And that's why for the countries and destinations that they have to offer that same experience that is going to help us to rebuild the trust from the traveler, we offer this safe travel recognition. Kenya, Jamaica are just some of those. Of course, as I say, Portugal was one of the first ones. And as I say, 145 countries around the world and destinations have received that. But this is not enough. It's important, and this is a lesson learned from 2001, the 9/11 crisis that we all had, but we need to do more. And if we move to the next slide, that's why under the leadership of Saudi Arabia and per their request, we put forward in an unprecedented event a plan to recover 100 million jobs. Yes, I'm talking. And if we can put our folks in mute, that would be great. I think that's my friend Bartlett that I can hear. So 100 million jobs, recovery plan.
Yeah, but Gloria's talking.
I think, Bartlett, can you put yourself in mute? That would be helpful. Or someone can do that, Christian, do you think?
Anyway, she's making a speech.
Yes, I've asked to have the mute.
That is okay. So let me try to continue going. I don't think that he's listening you.
And this earphone works.
I think, Christian, do you want to do something about it?
Yes. I haven't the hand, the technical up the hand. That's why. It's direct. Fine. It's normal.
It's normal. That's why we need to meet in person in Portugal. I'm really looking forward to that event, because this will never replace the face-to-face interaction. So the 100 million jobs, should we wait for him, or what do you suggest? The 100 million jobs recovery plan is very important, because that's to resume international travel. The private sector made a commitment of 12 points, 12 things that we are already doing, like offering insurance, for instance, for COVID, being flexible in making changing reservations as needed, and things like that. But there are 12 points that we ask the governments to help us. We cannot do it alone. The private sector cannot recover alone. And that's why events like this and the leadership from governments is so crucial to help us to recover. We need to have air corridors. We need to have testing instead of quarantines. And we need to learn to coexist with this virus while we continue protecting lives and traveling in a responsible way. As I say, this plan is on a website. It was put forward, and this is one of the legacies of the G20. If you move to the next slide, please. After the work from the 100 million jobs, you will see that we are making an emphasis of restoring. We need to restore international travel, and a lot of progress has been made. And I'm sure that the Secretary of France or Minister of France will talk about it, that Paris is offering already testing at the airports and departure, which is a great progress. And we're ready to start an air corridor between France and the US. Same situation with Italy, UK and the US as well, between New York and London. That pilot is starting in November, for instance. There are a lot of good news in terms of pilots for these air corridors, where we can remove the quarantines, have the data and the evidence to prove that we don't need to have quarantines, and we can coexist with this virus. It is crucial that we all work together to resume international travel, because the faster that we can resume international travel, the faster that we will recover, and the faster that we will bring back the millions of jobs impacted. If we move to the next slide, please. This was the last one. Thank you very much for your help, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And please, I want to once again recognize Portugal, recognize the organizers, my friend Rita, and the leadership from all the distinguished guests that we're going to hear through the event. because it's crucial more than ever to work together in a coordinated way for the benefits of the millions of people that depend on our decisions and our actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gloria. Madam President, the guidance you provide deliver a roadmap of sorts, but we have the means to deal with all these issues at the same time. I don't know. The key issue is how to survive. Mike Horn, you are acknowledged as one of the world's greatest modern-day explorers. While from swimming the Amazon River to unmotorized circumnavigation of the globe of the equator, at the equator, Mark's list of accomplishments as a solo explorer is parallel. I have just one crucial question for you, Mike. Right now, we are facing unprecedented times and a pandemic, terrorist attacks, dramatic climate changes, geopolitical strife. The human condition is suffering. You are a world champion of the art of survival and overcoming adversity. Can you give us your secret, Mike Horn?
Well, hi, Christian. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be part of this conference, as I believe that the common human factor that we all have is the capability of dreaming. And dreaming leads to traveling. And when you dream big, you want to do big things in life. If you dream small, you want to do small things in life. And it's not judged by the size of what we do, but judged by the willingness to leave home, to go places, and to discover new ground. Not only what you see, but what you live inside yourself. The COVID is definitely changing our greater world, but we must never stop living the world that we can create inside ourselves. And in the world that we can create, we can travel in different ways today. Tourism, as we know, tourism in the past 100, 200 years is busy changing. And if we're not willing to adapt to the circumstances, that is going to kill our envie, our willingness to want to travel. So there are moments today that will create opportunities for us to be able to travel in different ways. And I just returned from Svalbard, the north of Norway, going to 81, 82 degrees north. That's only 9 degrees south of the South Pole, where for the first time in the history of our planet, I could do recordings of whales that through COVID wasn't hunted. And the way that they communicate with each other has completely changed. So the moment that COVID allows people to as well protect nature would make it more admirable for people to go to places and to travel in different ways. So I think tourism should today create virtual ways of traveling. So it makes us dream to go to places. And the moment that confinement and restrictions are lifted, that people will travel less, but will travel in a higher quality with a better return for themselves. And if we can travel locally today, and that is what I believe the future of traveling before we start traveling internationally again would happen, it is to motivate the people in their country to be able to discover the beauty of what they have around you. Portugal is an amazing example of natural beauty. And if the Portuguese people travel in Portugal, and then the Swiss travels in Switzerland, where I live. The French travel in France, and around the world, people travel locally. That is when you can invest money into the local economy, make destinations that were small destinations and not so frequently visited by the foreign people, open and develop. And I believe that we still do have money, although there's less money circulating through aviation not functioning, through massive hotels not being completely filled, through amusement parks and tourism destinations that was over-visited. Today, what is important for us is to feed the market that we can discover. And we don't need to travel in groups of people anymore. We need to travel with people that you love, with your family, with your kids, in shorter periods of time, but in high intensity. And that's what I've done this summer. I took my daughters to the north of Svalbard, and we were the only boat out there. We spent 2.5 months in the most amazing environment in the ice. And to see nature strive, to see the world just being generated is a unique moment in this world. We mustn't look down. We've got to keep on looking up, because the last expedition I did was the crossing of the North Pole from Alaska all the way back to Europe in Svalbard, an expedition that has never been done before. 2 men left in the Arctic winter in the worst conditions that you can ever experience, and survived more than 130 days crossing the polar oceans. For many people, that's a nightmare. But for me, it was one of the greatest expeditions and learning curves that I've experienced in my life. So dream big, guys. Don't dream small. Don't see the dark. Look up and see the light. And the moment that the world opens up, we have to be ready to take the world on and invest in it straight away. I know we can look at curves, and we can look at how long it did in the past to recover. We can look at all those things, but we are the sole factor that can make things change. It's us, the human being. And the more we invest in it, the better it will be. The less we invest in it, the longer it will take to recover. We are the dominant factor. Don't think that we all just need to look at others before we start doing things. Look at yourself, create your own world, and go out there and live life.
Thank you, Mike. Your message is clear. Survival is first of all a question of mental determination and will, but it is also a question of energizing our thinking. In our meetings, we are too often confined to our proper way of thinking. The younger generations consider us as boomers. They demand we listen and then to act more than to speak. Jan Taylor, you are the executive editor of Travel Weekly. I am pleased to give you the stage to present the 3 young professionals. We want to hear their perspective of where travel needs to go. Jan.
Yes, welcome to this session on the Millennial Outlook. I don't know why they've asked an old man to moderate a session with 3 young people, but there you are. I'm joined by Marta Cabral, who's the leader of a sustainable tourism network in Portugal, by Frédéric Lizée, who's just launched a contest to develop sustainable adventure tourism, and by Isaure Delom, who promotes slow and sustainable tourism and set out to cycle to Evora to be with us today. This is the first ever 10-minute panel session I've ever moderated, so we're going to be lightning quick, and I'm going to have to ask you, please, to keep your responses really snappy so that we can get through this and give people something of value. Marta, tell us quickly about your association and what you expect the future of travel to be like.
Hello, good morning. I'm very pleased to be here. So Rota Vicentina is an association from the southwest of Portugal. It's a natural park. And basically we try to build a sustainable system for tourism both from the local perspective, but also from the market perspective. Regarding the future, we really hope to see a moment when we can all travel and feel safe enough to really be aware and informed about our positive impact on the places we visit, and not fearing that, oh, maybe this is the last time I will be in such a nice place, and not wanting to share. So really feel safe about being part of the solution and not a problem.
Okay, thank you. Isaure, what are your expectations of the future of travel? Clearly you expect it to be slower.
Good morning. Yeah, I expect to be slower, but my expectations are basically for decision makers to go towards an offer where the journey and the path of travel is as important as the destination. We certainly need to rethink the tourist attraction, putting an accent on the ecological aspects of it. But we also need to rethink the means of transportation and the frequency of traveling in order to create a coherent and sustainable experience.
Okay. Fred, tell us about the contest you've launched and what you expect of the future.
Yes, good morning. So in terms of expectations, well, I would love to see a real development in sustainable travel products and authentic, locally made experiences globally, but also a solid action to counter mass tourism across the world. And finally, more diversification in the places and destinations visited off the beaten track. So that's why I'm currently initiating a mission of awareness to foster travel as a force for good via a new project for international students. So this is going to be a global challenge to generate innovation, to spread understanding of responsible travel behaviors, and also to raise the voice of the tourism professional new generation. Okay.
Marvelously snappy responses from all of you. Marta, tell me then, what are the barriers, the main barriers to what you would like to see in the sector?
I would say that when we talk about sustainable tourism, we don't talk only about tourism. We talk about the local life of the destinations, and this is something we cannot control. So tourism itself becomes something a bit, the concept starts to be something we need to redefine. The biggest challenge here is to deal with the problems of the territory that are not directly concerned to tourism, but it's really about the sustainability of the region itself, of its social and economic system, and how it can be sustainable enough so that it can embrace a sustainable way of doing tourism, and this is very difficult.
Okay. Isaure, can I ask you then, what barriers do you foresee? You talked about to relook at the frequency of travel, presumably for people to travel less often and for longer, to take more time and so on. But people have pressures of time, they have jobs, they have limited holidays, they have limited finances and so on. So how do you see squaring that circle, and what are the barriers you see?
The most important barrier I see is the sustainable tourism offer exists, but the problem today is is that this kind of offer is available only for a small part of the public based on categorization. We got to stop putting the hippie travelers at the big and the big consumers, tourists apart, and make the ecological offer manage with the expectations of all. We need to generalize the sustainable tourism offer until it becomes a norm, I think.
Okay, but how would you do that? How would you make it the norm?
I think we have to promote this kind of tourism and to not be just a norm, but just being a natural way of traveling for everybody.
So is the problem essentially a marketing problem with a marketing solution? The problem is the categorization of travelers, tourists, and they need to be promoted to differently? Is that how you would change things?
Yeah, I think so. All the profile we have on the social réseau, how to say, I receive this kind of offer because I'm the kind of people who gonna do this slow travel. But the other travelers, more classical travelers, don't receive this kind of offer, and I think it's one of the problems.
Okay, Fred, let me come to you. What barriers do you see?
So, I've been in the travel industry, adventure and tailor-made travel for about 12 years. And I think first, there is a clear lack of responsible and eco-friendly travel consciousness, globally from institutions, tourism experts, but also from travelers, from clients. Secondly, sustainable tourism is still a niche market, and lots of travel companies still believe this is either too costly or too challenging, too time-consuming to implement, or even even unnecessary. So today, I think the major part of the travel industry model, like mass tourism, remains highly intermediated, which really prevents from leaving a true impact, a true positive impact, and more benefits, like real outcomes for destinations and local populations.
So the key for you is to change the ideas of those leading the industry, the institutions in the industry, and I suppose alongside that, to change the ideas about travel of the mass of the population.
Definitely. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's a combination of three main areas. Institutions, the professionals, and that's why my project is talking to the new generation, so represent the future of travel, and clients. We need to raise awareness among travelers as well.
Okay, so we have a session coming up next with some of the most senior figures in the global travel industry. Marta, what's your message to them?
I would say that sustainable tourism is not a trend. There is no other way. This is the only way. And I think it's also it has a lot to do with authenticity, transparency. And I think that the leaders really need to deeply believe in the sustainable system, also as consumers. It really has to come from such a deep level that it needs to be strong enough from all the perspectives, properly communicated. It needs to convince the people that are really worried about the world, about the communities they visit. And this is really not about just marketing. It has to do with the whole system. So I would say start by believing it deeply.
Okay, Isaure, what's your message for the leaders of global tourism?
My message is the change in the demand is already in motion. People are already asking for a different way of experiencing foreign destinations. And I will like to see the leaders of the travel industry act as such and not as late followers. They need to be at least on par with the actors who are already pushing that today and push further to become leaders of the tourism and travel change.
Okay, so they've got to get up to the level of the three of you. Fred, what's your message to the global industry leaders?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I've got my own message and vision. So I'm actually feeling that the new generation is really keen to take the lead, to reshape the face of the tourism industry, still while finding some inspiration from sustainable travel best practices. So in fact, I'm actually inviting leaders, to listen to the millennials community. I was myself born in 1986, so just the beginning of the generation, and they actually represent, the future of tourism, as I said earlier, and also asking them to follow until May 2021, as when we can meet face to face, the new Explorer Challenge movement, which is actually aiming at creating, implementing, and promoting slow and regenerative tourism ideas.
That's fantastic. That was the best 10-minute panel session I've ever been involved with. The message is clearly quick panels, slow tourism. Marta, Isaure, Fred, thank you so much. And Christian, back to you.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Marta, Fred, and Isaure. Jan, I don't know if you realized, but Isaure is my daughter. And the change in the Evora planning caught her in the middle of a 1,700 kilometers bike ride by her own, promoting the event from Nantes in France to Evora through Nouvelle-Aquitaine, Spain and Portugal. She is quite strong-willed. You can imagine the family dinner. She is the evidence that the young people to provide courage, perseverance, as well as determined leadership. That brings us nicely to our next session about leadership, courage, and perseverance.
Well done, everyone.
Thank you. Guillaume Thibault is partner at Oliver Women. He's leading the tourism department. For us at UNWTO Travel, he has been and he is an invaluable intelligence partner. With this outstanding firm, we plan to continue to create opportunities, develop understanding, and measure success while accelerating the transformation of tourism. Guillaume will moderate the main session of this teaser, and these speakers will be with us in Evora. I will ask Guillaume to introduce his prestigious speakers. Among them, I offer special greetings to Honorable Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, my Secretary of State. Bonjour, Monsieur le Ministre. And I have to acknowledge that Minister Balala is not able to be with us because he has a loss in his team in Kenya, and our thoughts are all of us going to our Kenyan friends, of course. Guillaume.
Thank you very much, Christian, for this introduction and your kind words. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. It's my big pleasure and honor to open this session. We will indeed address matters of critical importance to the future of tourism, as our sector is probably the most dramatically hit by the current global crisis. Large parts of the industry are struggling to survive. And from the previous conversation, we clearly see that fundamental transformation are required. So being a leader in these turbulent times is both a challenge and an outstanding responsibility. Today, we are lucky to receive a very distinguished panel of leaders who will tell us about courage, perseverance, empathy, which are required to thrive in this period. So I would like to warmly welcome our panelists, Gloria Guevara, that we just heard with pleasure, His Excellency Edmund Bartlett, Minister of Tourism from Jamaica, His Excellency Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, Secretary of State for Tourism from France, and Dr. Mario Hardy, CEO at PT. Hi, everyone. So Let's start our discussion with this. Right before the session, we just received a very powerful call from some of the bright representatives from our young generations. And they clearly tell us they would like to continue to travel, to experience new cultures, and cannot accept a sector which would be purely refocused on domestic journeys. But they also want to travel differently, and they are aspiring to a significant acceleration in the journey towards a more sustainable tourism that will create positive impact on communities, environment, and visitors. Today, for sure, is a tough period for 20-year-old generation. So as a industry, how do you think we can bring back hope to this generation? And in your view, what are the concrete responses that we can bring to them? Gloria, would you begin?
Yes, can you hear me okay? Thank you for having me. It was very interesting to listen to the previous panel. As you mentioned, we believe that the sustainable agenda has been accelerated. For us at WTTC has been a priority. And we need to convert actually this crisis that we're facing in an opportunity to get things right moving forward. And we believe that in this case, we need to involve all the different stakeholders. Before, we were probably only thinking public and private partnerships. We think that it needs to be public, private, and community partnership. The community has to be part of the solution. And in this case, I would say also the travelers, so that they are responsible when they travel. They help us to reduce waste. They help us to reduce, for instance, the footprint and other things that they are so important to be climate neutral by 2050. So we believe it's achievable. This is something that we have to do together, but every single part of the ecosystem has a responsibility. And in order to get there, we need to measure effectively and report and be accountable. So we are part of the solution. Travel and tourism is part of the solution, but we need to be accountable on the things that we're doing. And from our end, we have been gathering best practices, sharing more information, which is something that, by the way, in the past, we were not doing enough. And I think that now is the time to do that even further. And as I said before, we have seen an opportunity to accelerate the sustainable agenda and the goals that we have set since our Global Climate and Environmental Summit in New York in the Climate Week last year, to move towards where we need to be and also understand the different challenges that we're facing.
Thank you. Dr. Hardy, what would be your responses?
Thank you. Just to clarify, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Follow on pretty much from what actually Gloria just said, I would actually say one more thing is that also to the research that we've been doing over the last few months, we've done some sentiment analysis in terms of the desire for people to travel and what are they searching, what are they interested. And the good news for all of us in the industry is there's an immense desire for people to travel, not only domestically, but obviously more internationally, to continue to explore this beautiful planet that we have and the wonderful world that we have to offer. So that's the good news for the industry. The other thing we've also noticed in the research is that when people are searching, they are searching for sustainability. They are looking for eco destination. They're looking for green destinations. They're looking for places that can go into nature and appreciate the environment that we have available. So I think if, as I said to someone before, if the businesses that we're in today are not considering this, they will be left out. So I would strongly encourage any business, a hotel, the tour operators, businesses that operates in our sector, to really take the time at the moment. We have a lot of time to think about our future journey before they reopen their business in the next few months, I hope, to actually think about what they can do, the steps, the tangible steps they can take to move forward into this journey that will take them into a more green and a more sustainable business moving forward, in a way they will be able to welcome these guests that are actually looking for this type of services moving forward. As a destination, also the same thing, how you promote your destination, how you develop your products in your respective destinations also, to meet that increasing demand that we will have, not only from young people. I'm considering myself as part of them. That's also what I'm looking for when I actually want to travel. And I suspect many of us do as well.
Minister Lemoyne, what would be your message to young generation and their aspiration? Can you hear me? It seems like we lose Mr. Lemoyne. What about Mr. Bartlett? Are you online? Okay, so they'll come back later. So let's continue the discussion. So now I would like to raise probably a more personal question to both of you. We know that crisis can really make or break a leader. What is this crisis teach you about the art of being a leader? And what are your guidelines to work your way through this crisis? But I just see that Minister Lemoyne is back online, so I would come back to my previous question, if you can hear me well. So
yes, I hear you.
Excellent. So you're back with us. So my question to you, Monsieur le Ministre, would be, we heard previously the strong call from the young generation for a more sustainable tourism, and this generation is living some tough times these days. So what would be your message of hope for this young generation? And what would be the proposition or solutions that you would put on the table to bring this back home?
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting us to the event, to the virtual event. I'm really sorry not to be part of the previous conversation this morning, but I'm very happy to share this moment with you, with Gloria, with many of colleagues, and bravo, as we said in France, to Frédéric Lizée. The event can take place virtually. To meet next May, I think. Maybe a few words. Yes, as you mentioned, we are in a crisis, and we were hit firstly as tourism sector, but as the world crisis, I see as it's also momentum, and momentum. I think also to pave the way for the transformation of the sector. I know that Isaure Delom is also very mobilized on that topic. People will seek more safety, also more safety, and the new generation will mobilize on that. So it's also easy to share this concern of sustainability with in France, and we put also some tools on the table to help them. In our recovery plan, we put 50 million euros in order to promote slow tourism, to promote some initiatives in terms of sustainability, and I think that the customer also will have expectations. With last with the growing of the customers that were rural, so it's a true opportunity, I think, to maybe to work on a better repartition of the within the countries, and it's crucial because a few years ago we were nowadays we are experiencing tourism, I would say, and that's really a pity. But I think that it's also an opportunity to have this better repartition of the tourists. So. Of course, it's still very difficult for each of our countries for our tourism sector, but I think fundamental are here, and as soon as the pandemic will be beaten, I think that it will be there will be a push to transform our tourism sector. I think really.
Thank you very much. Minister Bartlett, are you with us? Okay, not yet. So let's proceed to the next question, which is, as I mentioned, more personal to you. Okay, so my next question is more about your leadership role in the current storm. How do you navigate the crisis personally? How do you find the courage, the empathy, and the drive to lead in this tough situation? And what are the tools that you use to work your way through this crisis? Gloria, if you want to start.
Can you hear me now? Thank you. Thank you for the question. That's interesting because it's not, I would say, just a specific answer. What has helped me in all the situations that I have faced in my life, and especially in this one, I would say, and this is something that I have seen from our leaders, is that you need to concentrate in the short term, in weathering the storm, but at the same time, keep an eye in the long term. And as we do both, you also have to think about the millions of people. At least that's what we do in WTTC Impact, that because of all the decisions that we can influence or that we can make can help us to change those livelihoods, right? It's pretty sad what we're facing, really sad what we're living. Some countries are really having a more difficult time than others, especially poor nations, developing nations, or nations that in our case depend heavily on travel and tourism. So from our end, I would say is concentrating the quick wins, the short term. How do we influence the agenda? How do we bring everyone together? How do we create this community where we share knowledge, learn from the past, support every decision with data and facts, while at the same time keep the long-term view, which has to do with sustainability, the digital agenda, so that we can do the right thing for the benefit of our sector and the millions of people involved, and communicate. That's basically what we're trying to do. I mean, short messages and communicate a lot, but keep in mind those two. That's what we do, and that's what we have been trying to do for the last months.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Hardy, what is your own recipe?
I don't know if we have a magic recipe. I think each one of us are dealing with challenges on a daily basis, could be personal or even with our own team. So sometimes people tend to forget we are leaders of industries. We, as Gloria mentioned, we impact the life of millions of people. But sometimes also we cannot forget about the people who are close to us, not only our families, but also the people we work with every day. We have teams, we have people we work that drives the programs we organize, and remind ourselves of the situation that they're in themselves, that they risk every day when they come to work, that maybe they're afraid of being contaminated or bringing the disease back at home. For many of us who live in Asia, it's very common for families here to live with their parents or their grandparents at home, which are more at risk of COVID. So that's something that people keeps in mind every day. But going back to the main point in the question, it's a balancing act. It's understanding all the challenges that we face every morning to see that the situation keeps evolving at a phenomenal rate. And each one of us have actually went through lots of different challenges in the past. This is not the first crisis each one of us went through. But certainly for me, in fact, I think for most of us, this is certainly the first crisis we see of this scale. And what is the most challenging in this particular crisis is the speed at which actually things are changing and keeping track with everything. And as Gloria mentioned, to try to actually clarify what is actually fact and what is actually an opinion, an insight. And that's sometimes really specifically at the early stage of the crisis, that was the most difficult thing to figure out. What is the truth? What is really happening? And how we move forward and make the right decision that will impact the life of the people that surrounds us, as well as the millions of other people who work in this sector. And we see it every day. I live in a very touristic district in the city of Bangkok. And I can tell you, I see it as I walk to work in the morning or as I walk home in the evening. I see in the streets that how few people there are, how many businesses are closed, signs are down, they're closed permanently. And it pains me to know that actually this country specifically is reliant very much on tourism.
Okay. Minister Lemoyne, what is your own way?
Indeed, this very complex period was also, I mean, a period where many people in France had the opportunity to see that tourism is a leading sector. I mean, because I'm playing with the word leader, because of course I will speak about leadership later. But I mean, tourism was seen before, previously, as I mean, maybe folkloric, but not. It's very important sector that irrigates many other sectors. I mean, for example, farmers, they need tourism to sell their products to restaurants and so on. And also there are many services linked to tourism sector. So the crisis was the moment where many people took awareness about that. And so it is, I mean, a positive output of the situation. And the consequence of that is that we put on the table many billion in order to save the sector. Talking about leadership in that time, I think that we had to be quick, to take decisions very fastly. For example, I remember it was in March, lockdown and was put in place. Many borders were closed, and we had to decide if yes or no. We put a special legislation in order to avoid immediate reimbursement from the travel agencies to the customers, because we had to deal with of course, the European legislation, and we had just a few hours to decide, and of course, we decided to put in place these vouchers. Another example is that as a tourism minister, I think it was the same for the colleague. We had to persuade, to convince our colleagues to put money on the sector, to embark the government in order to demonstrate that we were hit firstly and that we need a special support. So it requires intense interministerial coordination. And of course, we were very challenged for that. And in terms of methodology, I would add that I put in place a so-called comité de filière tourisme. I mean, it's kind of committee where we build together with municipalities, with the private sector, in terms of tourism, all the guidelines, and we had meeting on a weekly basis, okay, and it was very useful. It was very useful to have this arena.
Thank you for this. I have another question for you, which is related to the positioning of France today as the #1 tourism destination worldwide. If you think long term, how do you see the sector evolve? Do the crisis will impact the way the sector will propose its offering to the visitors? Do you see the competitive landscape evolving? And what is, in your view, the specific role of the ministry to get prepared to these changes?
Of course, competition was hard before the crisis. I think it will be harder after the crisis, because many destinations will seek to launch themselves So I think many will put money on the table in terms of promotion to attract tourists. So I think the landscape will be quite competitive. So that's why we have to use this time during the lockdown to work with the professionals in order to prepare ourselves to transform. I mean, the industry taking into account the new expectations from the consumers in terms of safety, in terms of sustainability, as I mentioned previously. So I think also we have to rethink the business tourism, because we saw that now there is, and that's the proof this morning, the ability to have also virtual event. So how to deal with the digital, I mean, trend. But there are also some new opportunities. Many companies now are putting in place so-called teleworking. I mean, we can also work remotely, being outside our own home or outside of our own country. We could imagine some kind of teletravel also, teletravel and teleworking together. So maybe it's a new niche that we could explore. So I think there are many opportunities that are also born with the crisis, but we have also a lot of work to make it I mean, efficient for the industry.
Okay, and building on this point, Gloria, how do you envision the future evolution of the private sector in this journey? Do you see the overall landscape of players evolving significantly? And in your view, what would be the contribution to private sector to the reshaping of the industry? I know you mentioned some of the points this morning, but if you could further detail, it would be appreciated.
Well, I think it's very important, as I mentioned this morning, the private sector is the one that creates the jobs, right? 80% of the participants in our sector are SMEs. And when we think about what comes after this crisis, what I would tell you is depending on the support that the governments are offering and the impact to the ecosystem. As an example, for instance, the French government, as the minister was mentioning, Jean-Baptiste, he has been offering an amazing support to our sector, and at the right time, we are going to be able to recover faster in his country, which is similar than Portugal and other countries, that they have protected the ecosystem in a way. Now, that being said, at the time of the recovery, it's going to be very complicated to see because it depends on what's left, right? We talked this morning about the jobs impacted, more than 140 million jobs around the world, but every country has reacted in a different way. So depending on how impacted that ecosystem is going to be at the end of the day, is going to be how faster that recovery will be and what are the players that are going to be left. The reality is that when an airline goes down, it's not only the airline, it's the travel agencies, it's the tour operators, it's the coffee shops, it's the hotels, because we are all connected. And that's what we say, it's very important to protect the entire ecosystem. And as the minister mentioned, the conversations that they are having within their cabinet and the governments to support our sector, such as the example that he's saying, the vouchers, are crucial for the survival of the private sector. So what is going to be after the crisis? What I can tell you is three things. For sure, there has been a lot of innovation during this situation, and we'll see some new players. We're going to see some new solutions, and the digital agenda has been accelerated. Second one is the sustainability agenda, as we mentioned before, has been accelerated as well. And the third one is that this sector is very resilient. Every single time we have recovered, we have proof that for the last years, and as I show in my charts this morning, in the last 20 years, we recovered. The question is, how long is it going to take? Is that going to be 3 to 4 years? Is that going to be 18 months? is going to be depending on this international collaboration and the leadership that we see among governments and the public and private collaboration, so that we can get it right and move faster in this path. But I believe that we're going to have better travel, more quality, more sustainable, and hopefully bring back those millions of jobs that have been impacted. But as I say also this morning, we cannot do it alone in the private sector. We need the collaboration from the governments, from the travelers, from everyone.
And Minister Lemoyne also mentioned new technologies, new ways of traveling or doing business. Is this a topic in which you believe your members will invest a lot in the coming years? And how do you think these new technologies could help reshaping the market?
Absolutely. Like, for instance, let me give you one example. Seamless travel, right? All the biometrics. We have been talking about that for years. Some countries are ahead, some countries are behind. This is one of the technologies that have been accelerated because it's touchless. It's going to help us to increase security and to move faster. So that is one that we see countries investing more. I see our members investing more. AI is another one that we see also learning from the past, using more data for decision making. Another one, we also see a lot of apps for virtual reality and also augmented reality being developed. Now there are also apps for like the contact tracing, or for instance, the certificate for the testing that, as you see, we have a lot of apps. Now we need to make sure that they connect and they share the data. If I do a test, to have a certificate that I tested negative so that I can board a plane or I can travel, and instead of quarantine, showing that I had the test. So there are a lot of solutions being developed by our members. And also for the business traveler, people are thinking that these type of meetings are going to replace the MICE. That's not going to happen. We have seen that over and over. Skype, Zoom, all these solutions are not new, have been around for years. So, and these are helping us to do business, but the human touch is still important, and also the cultural aspects. You will see an increase in business travel, an increase in leisure travel at the recovery, as has shown my charts this morning. Every single crisis that we had before, we had a recovery that came back really fast. It's just a matter of time, and that's what we ask everyone. We need to work together to reduce that time frame, and we can bring back that travel, and also good travel and sustainable, with support from the right technology. And as our members are investing in new solutions, you will see, as I say, a lot of new innovations as well.
So indeed, sustainable is really the key word, and sustainability also include the positive impact that the sector will make on local communities. So maybe a question for you, Dr. Hardy. How can private and public leaders, in your view, foster the emergence of this truly responsible and socially sustainable tourism that we already mentioned a few times?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's closely linked to actually what the topic was just before about technology. When one thing I'm actually really excited about this, if there's one thing that I'm happy about this crisis, there's not many, but one of them is the acceleration of the implementation of technologies. And not only to facilitate and improve travel, to make it better and faster and easier moving forward, but also implementation of technologies that will make our travel more sustainable, our stay more sustainable. Now is the great time to invest in developing renewable energies to support our hotels, our resorts, our facilities, to look at other technologies that can actually help us in that journey that will help us to achieve the UN SDGs, the 17 SDGs moving forward. There are a lot of technologies that are already available, but as I mentioned previously, the implementation of it is being accelerated because of the crisis. And that's an opportunity that we all need to grab together. It's not a responsibility only of the private sectors to take on these challenges. It's a collaboration and a partnership between both public and private sectors to implement these technologies moving forward, to get the guidance and the support from the government entities, not only from the tourism ministries, but from other sectors also within each of the respective governments, to work in collaborations between the respective departments of energy to environmental and sustainability, as well as others as well, to help the businesses to implement these technologies, not only financially, but also guide them in ensuring they implement the right technologies moving forward, that they have the right infrastructure. It's part of the urban planning or coastal development planning, and etc.
We just received a question from the attendants for you, Doctor, as well, which is, what do you think of the future impact for the Asian region when it comes to long-haul traveling?
That's a very good question. I just before this session, we had another webinar with my dear friends at IATA, and we actually talked about the air travel moving forward and the impact on the industry. Before COVID-19, it was easy for most of us to just jump on a plane and literally travel practically anywhere on the planet. Either with direct service or with connections in many, many destinations. So one thing that I'm concerned about is the capacity for us to travel to that same capacity in the future post-COVID-19. Will all of these routes still be available? Will our journey be longer because now we'll be forced to make some connections because of the lack of customers to actually be able to board these flights? And it will go back to that same level. And as Gloria mentioned before, the big question we don't know is how long? Is it 18 months or is it 2, 3, or 4 years? Most of us suspect it will take longer than we hope for, which means that actually between now and then, travel will be more complicated. So traveling to Asia, of course, it's going to be available. And we welcome everyone to come and visit us as soon as our borders are open. And we hope they're open soon, that we're able to welcome you. But your journey to here, at least for the time being, at least for the short, medium term, might be a little bit longer than usual.
Yeah. And so let me raise the question of talents that you mentioned, Gloria, which is obviously a very important one. There are increased job security concern these days, for sure. And we also heard about the call from the young generation to get some empowerment to craft the future of the industry. So what could be the key action plan to retain and attract talents which are needed to prepare the recovery?
I think the recovery is, well, first of all, let me just one step before. This crisis, and I think the minister mentioned this, the French minister, this crisis has helped us to put things in context and in perspective, right? Unfortunately, travel and tourism was always taken for granted, and that shouldn't be the case because we contribute to 10% of the global GDP and 1 in 10 jobs. Now, that being said, at the same time, we have been impacted. We are one of the sectors with entertainment and sports and others that have been impacted heavily because of this situation. A lot of jobs, as I mentioned this morning, more than 140 million have been impacted already globally. Now, as we know from the past, we recover faster. We recover pretty fast as long as we have the right support. Now, in terms of the future, when you look at the last 5 years and all the new jobs, when you consider the technology sector, the financial sector, healthcare, all of them around the world, and all the new jobs created the last 5 years, every single year, 1 in 4 were in our sector. So for the younger people, for the generations that are just finishing a school, I would say this is the sector that will give you the opportunities because we will recover. Now is the time to get the training. Now is the time to invest in yourself. Now is the time to understand where you want to do. Because the other thing is really nice about this sector is the mobility. Some of our CEOs, I can tell you, they started washing dishes, for instance, some years ago, and now they are CEOs. For instance, Keith Bard from Intercontinental Hotel, he can tell you he started his career washing dishes, right? And look at where he is right now. And like him, we have so many examples because of the mobility that this industry allows you. And here's someone with no skills or hardly finishing the high school to someone with a PhD will find an opportunity because the multiple industries that we cover. So what I would say to people, be patient, train yourself. And in the organizations, for instance, we keep training them, especially the most specialized jobs like the pilots, the ones that they need to get certifications or the ones that they need to be involved in security aspects and hospitality and others. We need to continue training them and making sure also they comply with the new protocols and the things needed But yes, there are some difficult times that we're facing right now, but we will recover. And it's like in every crisis, you need to convert this in an opportunity, as Mario say, take the time right now to do things, to innovate, but also to train yourself and to prepare for what is coming.
Mm-hmm. And more specifically, regarding to the local talents in emerging tourism destination, how do you see a future where we could elevate even more the local capabilities in these countries in order to create also sustainable businesses, which would be in opposition to a situation where global leaders would just go and implement their operation in this destination with no elevation of local skills?
I think it's very important, as I mentioned before, the public and private and community partnership, right? When kids finish school, if they don't have the right skills and then they are hired by these organizations, they need to go through a training program. So here it is very important to identify what are the needs of the future. We are conducting a study that we started actually before COVID about the future of work, because a couple of years ago, there was a report, I'm sure that probably you saw from Oxford University, that say that 47% of the jobs that we knew already were going to disappear or be transformed because of AI and the new technology. So we need to understand what are those skills of the future, what jobs are going to be automated, what jobs we're going to be needing, and making sure that the universities, the local communities, they have those skills, and we start developing those skills so that those communities have an important play and they can be included. And at the same time, what I would say, when you involve the community, you create product, you develop sustainable products, sustainable tourism, which provides experiences and make those destinations more competitive, where people can be hired in the place that they live. So you can find different type of jobs as well, but it needs to be done through this partnership. What are the needs? So that you can come up with the solutions. But if you don't understand the needs and you create the solutions, there's a disconnect right there. And that's when sometimes we see a lot of people that have been trained that they don't find jobs, or vice versa. You have a lot of job opens, but you don't find the right skills. So in that case, that collaboration is going to be crucial.
Dr. Hardy, do you want to share your own view on this topic that I know you like?
Sure. I'd love to. My first job was parking airplanes, so I can relate to some of the comment that actually Gloria made before. And I didn't speak a word of English until I was 20 years old, so moved quite a long way since then. But I think that there's two areas. One is there's the entry-level positions where pre-COVID-19 we had so much growth in travel and tourism that we didn't have enough students in classes to actually occupy all the job vacancies that we had available. Now we're in a situation, obviously for the moment, where everything's stalled. So we have in our network at PATA several thousand students who are members of the organization. It's a fast-growing area for PATA. Our youth engagement has grown enormously over recent years. And constantly over the last 9 months, since the beginning of the years, as we were running programs with our young students, the question kept coming back again and again and again. Is there a future for us in tourism? We are now competing with millions of other people who are unemployed, who are excessively qualified for the position, sometimes too qualified for the position, but are desperate to find a job at the moment. So it's a very difficult answer to give them, because at the moment, yes, the opportunities are limited. But as Gloria said, it won't last. We will come back. This industry is extremely resilient. We will return to a normality. And in previous crises, what we've actually seen is the growth after a crisis is even faster and bigger. So we will get more people to travel. The only remaining question that none of us know the answer is how long. And so I think for young people who are entering the education at the moment, that are actually planning to enjoy this industry, carry on. We need you. We will need you in the future to join this sector. But it means maybe in the short and medium term, you may have to find alternative. If you're just coming out of school at the moment with an education in travel and tourism, it is true. At the moment, the jobs are limited, but it will be for a short period of time. We will come back.
And the sustainability agenda also include the concern for the preservation of the environment, the biodiversity, climate change, for sure. What could be the industry's strategic agenda in these complex fields, and how do you think it can contribute to these very important topics for our younger generations? Gloria, you want to start?
Yes, sure. I think that's a very important topic. And let me just clarify here, because I think it's important to say when we talk about sustainability, sustainability includes a lot, right? We can talk about climate, we can talk about the environment, or we can talk about the impact to communities as an example, right? Climate is our footprint. And in that case, for instance, we have partnered with UNWTO, where we established some specific goals, scientific-based targets for our members. And we want to be climate neutral by 2050. Very specific, but we have some actions and we are sharing best practices. As an example, one of our members is Dallas Fort Airport. They have been, for instance, carbon neutral for years already, and which just people didn't know. And we need to share that knowledge because it's not only better for the environment, but it's cheaper financially. So it's a win-win for everyone, as an example. Then in the case of the environment, we partner, for instance, with UNEP. And we are also doing some work with the School of Harvard School of Public Health and Environmental Health, that they covered, in the case of UNEP, things like the waste, the plastic management, for instance, things about the environment. And in that case, we are going to launch a report for plastic, but we also need to get engaged with the traveler, because before COVID, when you were thinking about breakfast and you're thinking about buffets, you have a lot of waste there, right? And that's something that we need to reduce in order to reduce our footprint. Same situation with the plastic, not using single plastic, and all the different initiatives, not use of straws or not use of bottles, or all the different initiatives that we have. And for that, we need to learn to share best practices as well, document the impact with data, with facts, with evidence. And we have some specific targets as well in both cases, the climate and the environment, where, as I said before, is we need to measure, we need to have some goals, we need to publish the report on progress. And for that, we also partnered with GTEF, for instance, and others, and Sonex, where they are helping us with the registry in the case of the companies that they already have these scientific-based targets and sharing. So a lot is going on, to the point that our board has a vice chair, just the head for sustainability, because this is a top priority for the global private sector and travel and tourism. That being said, also the community is important. How do we make sure that you buy local, that you produce local, that you engage with the community, that you train them? And in that regard, a lot of our members are doing great things with the community, empowering the community. Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, Melia, all of them are engaging with the communities in order to make sure that not only they preserve their culture, but they produce local food that is sustainable, that it has a smaller footprint, but it also they benefit. So as I say, when we talk about the sustainability, it needs to be clear that it has multiple areas. It's not just the climate, it's not just the environment, it's not just the community. And we also need to make sure that we preserve wildlife. Unfortunately, Valala couldn't make it to this panel, but let me just tell you, the lack of tourism, the lack of travelers to Africa, for instance, to Kenya, is impacting wildlife. Why is that? Because the money that the tourists spend in the photo safaris, for instance, and all those experiences help to protect and pay for the people that protect the wildlife. And right now we have seen an increase in illegal poaching because of the lack of travelers. And it's the same situation in the Caribbean, for instance, with illegal fishing that unfortunately Bartlett is not with us. So we need to find that balance, because we can travel in a sustainable way, protect wildlife, protect the ecosystem, and at the same time provide a social benefit for the locals that depend on travel and tourism, and do it in a sustainable manner.
Thank you. Dr. Hardy?
Yes, as Gloria mentioned, sustainability is a word that encompasses lots of different things. Social economic impact, for example. And Ministre Lemoyne mentioned something very important before, that quite often we tend to forget in our sector, certainly so those who do not work in this sector tend to forget, is that travel and tourism is more than just flights and hotels and tours. It's all the other people that are actually producing food for the people who are actually the tourists who visit, the farmers are part of the tourism industry. The taxi drivers, the entertainment, the people making craft in the villages and the communities, they're also impacted in a crisis like this. And so being sustainable is ensuring also that the communities and the people who work in the sector who are depending on this sector are also well looked after. They're actually provided the resources to develop their food, the food in a sustainable way, to distribute in a local manner as well. I think it's really important for great hotels like Six Senses who buy locally, produce locally, also to ensure that we minimize the CO2 emission by the transport of vegetables and meat and whatever else we distribute for the guests and the properties. Food waste is also a very, very big component of travel and tourism. PATA conducted a program called the Buffet Initiative that was led by a group of students that became extremely successful, which is 10 steps, very, very simple steps for convention centers, for hotels, for restaurants, for catering companies to reduce their food waste in a significant manner by doing just simple 10 things, 10 steps that will actually drive them. And it all starts by measuring, to be able to understand how much are you producing or in excess, and how can you reduce it. And it's the same thing with CO2 emission, and it's the same thing for other components too. Mm-hmm. So measuring and understanding the data is really critical here.
Mm. So we are now reaching the end of our discussion. Maybe as a wrap-up question, what would you see as the most critical challenges for the industry and for its key stakeholders to achieve in the coming next 12 months? And what are your own key actions that you would like to succeed in this short period of time?
Sure, I'm happy to start. I think Gloria will probably have a similar message, so I can speak maybe on behalf of both of us. we want borders to reopen. That's really critical. Over the next few weeks and months, borders need to safely reopen. We want simple processes to be put in place: testing, no quarantine. Quarantine, of course, if you're considered positive, but if you have a negative test, no quarantine. You're tested before departures, you're tested at arrival, you're tested if you need to during your stay, if you stay for extensive period of time. We have a digital health passport to track when you've been tested, how you've been tested, and also vaccines whenever it's available. We have contact tracing, a set of protocols that will be uniformed across the world, that are simple to understand for business and travel, that it is simple to understand for travelers, that allows people to travel safely and minimizing the risk. Anyone who believes we can achieve 0 cases, it's not possible. But if you want to minimize the risk, you implement procedures, you put them in place so we can restart this industry. And one last point, I would say it's also very important for destinations, for countries to have a plan. We as an industry want to see a plan. When you're going to reopen, which destination. We're not necessarily say open blanketly, you can travel anywhere freely, wherever you want. No, you may have to reopen with destinations that are deemed safe, destinations that actually have the cases well controlled, and allows you to get the residents to travel back and forth in a safe manner. And I think we want that plan so that businesses can get organized. They can do their budget for next year, they can do their marketing, they can start selling, and they can get their staff back trained in the office and ready to welcome the tourist again. So it sounds simple. I know it's complicated. It's not easy. There's a lot of different parties involved, the health ministries and other areas. But this industry desperately need it. The world desperately need us to travel, and we all want to travel, including myself.
Yeah.
Gloria?
Exactly what Mario mentioned. As I say, that's part of what we have been pushing, the testing before departure and all of that. I would add to what he say. I think there are 3 things that we need. We need countries to change the mindset, because right now it's just only about containing the spread. which is a priority, but I think we need to continue containing the spread, but also to learn to coexist with this virus. And we can do that in a responsible way. The reason why we have seen a lot of second waves is in Europe is because we have not followed the protocols. I can speak for the country that I live, that I have been in the supermarket and I have been in multiple places. People don't wear the mask. They don't have the social distance. It's up to all of us. We need to protect ourselves and we need to protect our sector and at the same time resume travel in a responsible way. So we need to have in the mind, how do we contain the spread? Because this virus is not going away, at least not in a short time frame, that we can resume international travel, continue with a new normal in our lives in a healthy and safe way by following the protocols, by wearing a mask, doing all the things that we're supposed to do. That's one, and that's for everyone. And the second one is for our leaders to talk to each other, to learn from each other, and to coordinate. We understand that the priority is your own citizens, and you need to look after your own country. But this ecosystem is so connected, and the world is so connected that now through leaders, they need to step up and talk to other countries and establish those connectivities, as Mario mentioned, the air corridors. How do we get flights back between top destinations, between Europe and the US, between Asia and Europe, for instance? How do we get that connectivity in a responsible way? Well, with an international testing protocol. And for that, we need to have political will and we need to have leadership. And the third one that I would say is that public and private coordination. In some countries, it's amazing. Portugal is fantastic, and France is great. Germany, here in the UK, is also very good. Spain. But unfortunately, that's not happening everywhere. And we need to have that coordination, public and private, and also among countries in order to recover faster. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about livelihoods, lives impacted. And the domino effect of this COVID is not only, unfortunately, all the people that have suffered and died, but all the consequences of the others that are impacted because they don't have a job, they don't have food for their kids, and it's impacting their life heavily. And we need to consider all as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. A very straightforward question just received from the chat. Will there be funding opportunities available to train tourism professionals on sustainability from your organizations?
Mario, do you want to go first?
Funding, no. But we do have training facilities. We do have online programs at the moment. Normally, we have them in person, physically also. I say no, but also not entirely, because we do work with aid agencies, with Asian Development Bank and many other organizations, which will actually fund different initiatives. But we need a very, very specific program that is actually delivered to us and what is the expectation. And that's something we can approach aid agencies depending on the size of the different projects. So not directly funding from our agency, but we can certainly support initiatives and projects in different ways.
And I would add there is a lot of training available free online. It's just a matter of searching. Schools are offering that. I mentioned Harvard School of Public Health, that we have a partnership with them, and others have free sustainable training. And we are in the process of also defining sharing best practices, documentation. So I would say that we will coordinate that eventually. If you don't find the right training, we'll make sure that there's some training as well, because our members also provide a lot of training, not only to their employees, but to the communities and everywhere. So we will bring all that training together, put it in a hub, and make it free and accessible for everyone. Just give us some time, because we have a lot of things going on, but this is something that it will come for sure.
Yeah, you can also search on the PATA network. We have done we have done actually over 110 webinars, believe it or not, since February 1st. But many of them are specifically about sustainability, and they're all freely available online. So we have another one coming up on food waste just next week. So.
Okay, Christian, we heard during the session about the complexity of this journey and the transformation which is required for the industry. We also heard a lot about how important was it to create this ecosystem involving both private and public players. And World for Travel is an excellent forum to build these linkages. So what is your vision of the role Evora should take to craft this ambition and maybe to accelerate the concretization of some of the initiatives that we mentioned before?
Yes, thank you, Guillaume. Evora Forum is something that is very special. You know, I spent all my career in both sides, private and public sector. And what I saw is there is really differences, and sometimes I'm going to ask for the next panel, these people are not speaking the same language. And at the same time, we have to hear and to listen first and to hear what's the changing or coming in the demand, what the young people, we had these young professionals speaking, what they have in mind, because there are to be the demand for tomorrow. And at the same time, we have to involve all these stakeholders. Sometimes we have a lot of events, of course, but they are just like you are swimming in your own lane. We are speaking, well, the people from the airlines are speaking mostly with the people of the airlines. It's the case for accommodation, it's the case for the destinations and so on. And there wasn't a place where we can put all of these people together, not only to speak about what's going on, but to speak about what it will come in the future, but in the very, very near future. So this transformation, we guessed before the pandemic that it was something that was very demanding. But this transformation means transformation of any of the part of the chain, because this chain is very, very diverse. So if only one member of the chain is changing, it's not enough. What we have, we need to align all this, and this is a great job made by WTTC, UNWTO, PATA, and all these the other travel organizations. But we want to put them together, not only for one region of the world, but for any regions of the world. So the purpose of Evora Forum is this given purpose, to put everyone in the same room to find the way to change for good of humanity, but for good of travel and for good of the planet, and all at the same time.
Thank you very much, Christian, for this very precious conclusion. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Mario. It was great insights. I hope you all appreciated the quality of these insights. And I will now hand over to you, Christian.
Thank you, Guillaume. We know that even if we are in a tunnel, the light is visible at the end. And maybe it's necessary to be in the dark to see it. Courage and perseverance are the values and qualities we all want leaders to show. Marta, Fred, Isaure asked for a new way of thinking. It is not an option, it's mandatory. It sounds like they have been heard, but it is not enough just to advocate change. It is now time to practice. Let's go through our last session. So, yes, maybe we have to move to the other session. Oh yes, it's good. It's did. So 3-star moderators out of 24 confirmed for the summit are going to provide a preview of the topics for discussion and debate on their panels in May. Ramzi Kouri, head of news, Raya Television. Claire Irvin, head of travel at the Telegraph. Maribel Rodriguez, senior vice president, WTTC. Oliver Martin, partner, 2031 Consulting Incorporated. Debbie Flynn, managing partner, global travel practice at FIN. And Dr. Alessandra Priant, director, Europe Department of the UNWTO. All of you are prominent global travel observers and specialists. It is a chance for us to welcome you all together to outline, to give your thoughts and insights on the cause we are all working towards, the recovery of tourism through its transformation for the good of humanity. You are moderators of several sessions at World for Travel in Portugal on May the 10th and 11th. Faithfully thank you for your commitment. To start off, one question for all of you. Is transformation the only way for your industry, our industry, to recover? Do you feel all stakeholders in the industry are able to achieve a transformation? Is there a particular subject that is most important to a transformation? You have 3 minutes each to reply to this very difficult question. Claire, what is your insight?
Well, in short, yes and yes. A fundamental transformation really has to start with the infrastructure. So that necessarily involves all stakeholders. And, you know, whether they are at the forefront of that or being pulled along, you know, it's not going to work unless everybody's involved in that. So what we need really to do is look at how we can redress that structural imbalance between the provider of the holidays and the so that being the host or the hotel of the destination, and the intermediary, so the shore operator and the airline. So, you know, that's really going to mean an absolutely fundamental rethink in terms of, you know, what will the role of the bigger tour operators be, and, you know, how will they rebalance that relationship with the destination and the hotelier and their suppliers. And if by the very nature of rebuilding this industry means they are delivering less people, that might be because of less flights, it might be because of consumer confidence, it might be because of the cost of travel. How are they then going to ensure that the survival of those destinations, and that a greater percentage and a proportion of profits is going to those people on the ground? So really, you know, the question is, what does a business model revolution look like that safeguards the consumer investment? You know, we've seen some massive holes in that. The workforce for the intermediary, so all the people we employ in travel and tourism, you know, on the ground at this end, and, you know, the well-being of ground staff and at the host destination. So, you know, there's a massive job ahead of us, really, and so that is going to involve everybody. Have I done that in 3 minutes?
Okay, thank you, Claire. I have just one thing to ask you, is to plug your mic, because it wasn't working well.
Ah, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Maribel.
Hello, bon dia, Portugal. It's a pity I cannot be in Guevara. So beautiful city next to my hometown, just in the border. So I hope that in May I will be able to join you. So travel and tourism is in constant change, but it's very resilient. So it is ready to recover. The private and public sector working together should be able to do that. We have been studying over 90 crises, and the time to recover from different crises has been changing constantly, but decreasing. But now we are living a totally different, that is unprecedented. And we need to, of course, learn from the past to be able to recover faster. So we in WTTC have been working in different principles in the way to recover, to overcome this crisis. And I hope that in May we can discuss with all the panelists about these 4 principles, where we are with the path to find a coordinated international approach to reestablish operations, to reopen borders and remove barriers, where we are. Or the question would be, and discussion would be, where we are and what are the agreed platforms that will enhance the seamless traveler experience, adding the health component before and after the vaccine. We will be, of course, discussing about an adoption of where we are with the adoption of the global health and safety goals, and of course, what are the governments doing to continue supporting the private sector, because this is not possible to overcome without working together. We have seen that private sector has been working, and they have joined forces to communicate with one voice. So I would love to share at that panel at the time where we are up to there. Thank you.
Thank you, Maribel. Ramsey, what are your insights yourself? Ramsey, we can hear you. We cannot hear you. Can you put your mic on?
What a pleasure to be with you today, and I'm looking forward to one of the most important conferences on tourism in May. It is going to be extremely important because of transformation. There is no way business can go as usual under the current crisis, the pandemic, and all of the complications that have risen from that. It won't be as usual. There has to be transformation. There has to be change. It has to be done at the local level, and change that has to be done at a bilateral, multilateral level in order for the transformation that is going to work for the travel industry to be able to go back and function properly under the circumstances for that to be able to work. My sessions have to do with risk mitigation. As we all know, it is no longer about insurance. We have to take care of business at the local level, and we have to agree amongst each other on how we are going to be able to achieve trust. Why? There will be millions of people who really need a break, millions of people who really need to get out. These people will do it. They will go, they will travel. The travel industry can actually boom only if we are able to give them trust. They have to trust that they are safe. They have to trust that they are not going to get stuck in some country and the vacation is going to become so costly or impossible to achieve because they have to go back to work. They have to trust a lot. How do we achieve that trust? And it's a new kind of trust because there are so many other elements. A lot of stakeholders are involved at the local level and also at the international level. And these people have to get on board. And without us getting together, without us sitting together, and without real solutions, solutions that have to do with cross borders, solutions that have to do with the whole travel industry, and we all know its elements and its partners, but also solutions in terms of communications, because all of this has to be to the public. I'm very excited about May, and I do believe that transformation can actually be achieved, but also this is a great opportunity to go back and talk about sustainability. Whenever we talk about change, this is a great opportunity, and let me tell you why, and I'm going to be very frank. It's always been the chicken or the egg. Survivability versus sustainability. We need to survive rather than worry about the environment, heritage, and all of these elements that are part of sustainability. Well, now we are forced to take care of business in order for us to survive. If we are able to plug in all of the elements of sustainability that we've been talking about for so many years, in May, let me tell you something, they can be incorporated one way or another. Why? Because now we are talking about health, we are talking about the well-being of people, and we are talking about the well-being of cultures, societies, countries, and everybody is going to come crying wolf on the economy and all of that. But then again, sustainability is not the enemy of economy, and we can communicate that very well in May, if you allow me. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ramsey. Your statement is very clear. Debbie, you're a communicative person. What do you think of the transformation? I mean, communication is also a sector that is transforming itself a lot.
Good morning, everybody, and Christian. I'm very sorry not to be with you in person today, but we have something to look forward to in May. I think we are transforming, or should be all the time, but I think COVID has demanded us to transform ourselves at a galactic speed. It will be survival of the speediest, but I believe that the majority of the industry will step up, and many already have, and are creating a new dawn for our travel industry. I believe there are two areas that are really intrinsic to this process of successful and rapid transformation. We need to embrace our brand humanity. We all know brands which have shown empathy and compassion over the course of the pandemic. Those that have adopted an authentic tone and demonstrated that they're not faceless brands, and they've talked to people as humans. We all need to audit our sustainability story and start to communicate it, to weave green threads through our brand narrative, look at areas where we can do better. The societal element of sustainability has been brought into sharp focus by COVID, and this is where we can really make a difference going forward. We should look at which of our products really do champion the local community. Do we help the local community by buying locally? And do we actually put money into people's pockets? I think a great example of what's going on in the UK at the moment is the Shop Local campaign for Christmas, where actually people are sharing local businesses and encouraging people to buy locally rather than through Amazon. Societal sustainability is the new zeitgeist, and the brands that ignore it will not transform for the better.
Thank you, Debbie. It's very clear too, and we are all in line, I guess. However, your insight, your more an economical point of view, but you have also a personal point of view of that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not trying to be controversial, but I think the question was, is transformation the only way for our industry to recover? And I think definitively it is not the only way for our industry to recover. In the short and medium term, we can think and act like it's 2019, which we as an industry have kind of always done in the past. And presented with a crisis, we tried to stick to our knitting and the status quo and just assume that things will go back to normal. And I think so much of our growth to date, leading up before COVID, it was by chance and it was by luck and not really because of effective strategy. We were benefiting, we're the tourism generation that has benefited from a very tremendous economic growth and the emergence of China. However, in the long term, and I think in the medium and to long term, I think because of climate change and the social narrative, temperature increases are a fact of life. Sea level rise is a fait accompli. Extreme storms are just becoming a reality, and wealth inequality is just, spreading around the world in local communities and in all countries. I think from a medium to longer term, I think transformation for our industry is a must. And again, I'm a multilateral and I believe in the importance of the power of multilateral relationships, but I think we are going to solve this when we start thinking more closer to home at the community-based level to link tourism with economic development and social development. If we can think smaller, it becomes a lot easier for businesses and local DMOs to really understand and appreciate the business imperative around sustainability. If we think broader speaking, which is kind of what we've been doing for the last little while, then we get into these big climate or big social agreements with little or no effort to show after years of having these agreements in place. So I think this is really the only way we're going to be able to transform as an industry moving forward.
Thank you very much, Oliver, to have a slight different point of view. It makes and you had it something. We must to be alive at least, and it's mandatory. Alessandra, UNWTO, you're always working on transformation, but transformation with all your members, it's certainly a good deal. What is your insights?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Christian. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. And I would also like to give a warm hello to one of my favorite countries in the world, which is Portugal, and really looking forward for May. I would like to point out a few things, if you allow me. First of all, definitely transformation is the only way to recover, in the sense that this was unprecedented. It was unforecasted and it was totally unexpected, unfortunately, and therefore impacting the level of preparedness that all our systems had. And somehow, especially in the European region, which was the cradle of, let's say, the surprise, unlike other countries, because of course SARS already happened before in Asia, and other big events of different kinds, maybe relating to natural disasters, happen in different parts of the world. Nevertheless, this was the first time in which the core, the 51% holders of the market share of global market share of international travel was put in front of a mirror to say, okay, now this is bad. Now I don't know what to do. Let us try, let us put priorities, let us understand how we face it. But then again, we're in the middle of a second wave, and still there's too many things uncertain. So definitely transformation is the way to recover, but not transformation per se. The problem is we have an unsettlement at the core, at the basis, at the pillars, which are both financial and economic, and of course are also from a larger perspective, social, cultural, and as a global tendency, big question mark, where are we going? As I often said, it's not a matter of what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. So in this sense, this transformation operates, and this is the wording of UNWTO from its beginning, in a very cautious, gradual approach, nevertheless, extremely focused on the acting, rather than, there's a time for data, there's a time for analysis, and there's a time for action. And at this point, also to be able to answer your second question, what we feel and what our Secretary General has been advocating for from the beginning, together with many other leaders of the world, obviously, is that if there's no togetherness, which is a little bit beyond coordination, if you allow me, there's no progress. So the transformation is achievable only if the path is clear, everything is sort of agreed, and the actions, at least the core action, are undertaken together. We're not seeing togetherness yet. Especially in the European Union, we're not even able to resume Schengen. So we are definitely, there's huge paths forward. We went straight to Brussels to talk about it. They listened to us. We're progressing. But nevertheless, from the perspective of the travel industry globally, these are baby steps. And there's going to be a time where, as much as the impact was big in the beginning, then the results and the effects on the larger part of the value chain of tourism are going to be very, very loud. So to answer your third question, the particular subject that is most important to a transformation at the moment is listening to each other and really understanding that there's no competition. There's no, I want to shine or I want to take advantage of your market share erosion, but there's really seriously a global need for deep awareness of how important this is going to be for our sector, for our lives, because tourism is the most human industry of all industries. And if it gets affected, it touches upon our deepest needs. In the pyramid of Maslow, we're talking about the basic needs, which is to have a roof above our head, to get fed, and to, at the end of the day, build our beautiful memories. So here we go. Thank you very much, Bora. This is the way to do it.
Thank you, Alessandra. Yes, solidarity is key, of course, and I think we are missing solidarity, and maybe this crisis is showing the way to find a new way of solidarity and acting together. Claire, you represent the consumer view of this panel. According to you and what you observe, is the consumer changing, and how? What is the traveler expecting? How can he, she be convinced to travel again?
Well, I hope you can hear me slightly better.
Yeah, very well.
Good. So, well, look, we can see from the rush to book when corridors open up and when COVID numbers go down that there's a committed consumer pent-up demand for travel It's still there, it hasn't gone away, and they want to get back to holidays. But the question is, how do we buoy a wider confidence in the industry and its ability to get the consumer there and back to their holidays safely? So I think that the industry needs to take, as I mentioned earlier, a fundamental look at the business model for agents and operators and their actual ability to refund when they're effectively currently working in arrears. We also need a sustainable model that allows consumers to make plans in confidence so they won't lose out if borders suddenly close, travel suddenly impacted by external disaster, or, this is going to be a long-running problem. It's not going to, as we've seen, it's not going to go away quickly. But this business model also needs to support agents and operators to run a profitable business and support their own workforce and expertise. So, that's a big ask. I think in terms of the consumer, there's going to be, practically, there'll be a renewed focus on hygiene. And over the course of the crisis, I've been very, very vocal about how travel doesn't want to start marketing itself in terms of hygiene and kind of what cleaning products it's using. But, we do need to have globally a realisation that there needs to be a minimum standard for health and safety, that's been raised, and all suppliers need to run to this. But I think beyond the practical, there will be a heightened appreciation from consumers for the position of their host destination. There's this increased kind of humanity about how we travel and who we meet. And when they do meet people who are in a less fortunate position, there'll be an increased focus on how their money will benefit the people they're meeting via tourism. And I think as consumers, we'll all have, a renewed wonder, really, at travel. We've been waiting to travel for so long. We're realising what we've missed. We've realised it's a privilege, it's not a right. And we've there is a massive realization globally about how fragile that is. It as we've seen this year, can just disappear. So I think in terms of the consumer deciding where their money goes, that they will want to know more about that, and they will want to understand how best to behave in terms of how they spend that, but also in terms of their impact on the environment, their impact on the people they meet and the wildlife they meet. So this kind of new, also I think throughout the crisis, those people who've been lucky enough to travel have reported back about this sort of new old world. So, if you go to a city now, you see the city, you don't see masses of other tourists. It's a much purer experience, and it's not blighted by over-tourism. So, I think consumers are going to be expecting us as the tourist industry to somehow deliver more of that experience, even when more tourists are able to travel, and just kind of enable this deeper and more resonant connection between the traveller and the people they meet and the places they go. So, I think in summary, there is a pent-up demand, and I think people will really want to travel again. But I think we as an industry have to realise that there is, everything the game has raised, and that includes consumer expectations.
Thank you, Claire. Debbie, you work hand by hand with destinations. How can they provide this trust? Do they have the means, authority, leadership to manage the transformation of their territories?
Well, we've seen some amazing work with the destination clients that we work with, and of course many others that we don't work with. And never before has the health and safety issues, Claire referred to them, been more prevalent for travellers. And so much so that I think if there's a niggle in terms of any doubt with a traveller about the health and safety protocols of a destination, it could be the deal breaker in terms of the travel commitment for that particular holiday. So I think it's all about doing the right thing at the right time. We saw destinations like South Africa, Portugal, Dubai launch very emotive stay-at-home campaigns when the pandemic first struck. And they began the journey of building trust in their brand by creating this emotional connection that I talked about earlier. We've got some great destination leaders out there, and I think there's lots of examples of things pre-COVID to inspire us, and right here in the middle of the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, a great example is Dominica. They demonstrated a total change of mindset after the hurricanes of 2017 devastated the island by setting themselves the challenge of achieving climate resilience status, and that was a world's first. Now, if we fast forward to where we are now, Jamaica is a fantastic example of how a destination has worked really hard to protect both their own local community, which is really important, and we've heard it talked about, people feeling nervous about tourists coming in, but also their customers with their resilient travel corridors, and also the very recent announcement last week about the very innovative insurance program, Jamaica Cares. We heard earlier Mike Horn talk about the importance of domestic tourism. And I think over these last few months, we've seen some fantastic examples of destinations that have really embraced domestic tourism, but in a new way. And they've opened up their own country to their local markets to explore off the beaten track experiences, which has invested in their own local communities. But at the same time, what they've been able to do is test the water, get the feedback from the local people in the country to give confidence to the international inbound market in advance of the borders opening up.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes, local market is very important, I think, and we must consider it as we consider the international one. Alessandra, you are a doctor of economics. I didn't mention previously, but and you are of course a prominent member of the UNWTO. Has anyone tried to revive the travel model question to shift the economics of the travel industry? Can profitability be measured another way? Big questions. Short answer.
Very big question, exactly. When you gave me the Lori shared with me, she said, I only have 2 minutes. And she also told me I cannot even spoil too much and leave a little bit for me. So no, definitely, this is a very important question. And thank you very much for that. We, as you know, at UNWTO, we have a strong focus on data. We have a market intelligence department and statistical department running closely with the rest of the world and with many other partners. We've set up dashboards. We're monitoring constantly. But of course, this is not just a service for the member states. This is also a starting point, because we do think this is the moment where data really is the mantra beyond sustainability and innovation. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to also put down the new metrics, because as you very correctly highlighted, now there's a change, there's a shift in the business model for sure, which includes various aspects. We're talking offer, we're talking demand. My colleagues have previously highlighted very important elements, because when you change the metrics, definitely, for example, when it comes to the shareholders' value, what are we talking about? Definitely there's a change in the matrix. And definitely, if we're talking about a traditional business model of travel, which basically, for example, for the airlines, works on density and time, this is going to change. What are the parameters for new destinations? This as well is going to change. And what is the effect, for example, with regards to this sharing economy? What is the impact for the non-urban destinations? We're all talking about domestic tourism, because that was the only thing that was available during the summer, for example, domestic and nearby. But definitely opened up an ample variety of strategic possibilities, which obviously implied a very important step forward also with regards to sustainability and innovation. How do we monitor that? Because the answer to, okay, there's no more over-tourism in the major points of attraction doesn't mean that we're all going to shift when it's possible to travel all the people in the countryside or in the villages of the planet. So there needs to be a balance and an equilibrium. And in this sense, the variables at stake are really, might be completely different. Let's say that we're going to have to adapt our language and probably change the vocabulary of it.
Thank you, Alessandra. It's very important to see that yes, things are changing and are not quite prepared to do so. So we have to rethink on in another thing, in another way, so that we can maybe find solutions. Oliver, I know you are focused on the transformation of the travel supply chain. According to you, what will be the major changes? Do the industry players have the capacity to adapt their business model? And if not, who will be the new players?
Yeah, thank you for that. So just a few things, and just going back to what some of my fellow panelists have said. So we have definitely seen pent-up demand. And I think going back to your question, Christian, it's, are we as an industry actually capable of dealing up effectively with that concept of pent-up demand? Pent-up demand tends to translate into mass tourism, which tends to be 2019 thinking. And if we really want to go to that transformational model, we have to think how we can effectively deal with that pent-up demand, address it properly, so that we are actually going after sustainable tourism, not the mass tourism model of what we previously had. And again, thank you, Alessandro, for talking about data. Data is awesome. And you know, we as an industry collect a lot of data. It's very few destinations are effective at actually drawing out the insights from that data in order to make, you know, effective cases and business cases around sustainability. And I think that's a big challenge for us. I think the folks that will be dealing with this are, you know, first and foremost business, because business understands the imperative around sustainability, you know, either from a cost perspective or, you know, a brand differentiation perspective, and they'll get it. I think destinations, which tend to be governments, really need to get with the program of where we need to go as industries. Many of the destinations that, you know, our firm is working with and other destinations that we have seen are still kind of, they're still in that thinking process of 2019. When's tourism going to return, and how can we you know, get our market share? We need to transform that thinking. We need to think, how do we deal with that pent-up demand, to think more sustainably from a yield perspective, from a dispersal perspective, from improving the seasonality perspective, which all translates to better destination and visitor management, where we can effectively deal with things like, you know, over-tourism, which we had, you know, prior to COVID.
Oh, thank you, Oliver. It's very clear too. Maribel, private and public actors are not, I haven't mentioned it in the last panel, are not easily working together. I know it personally because I had several positions on both sides during my career, and public and private actors, as I mentioned, do not speak the same language, and we are very few to be polyglots. It is time to mix the organizations and the people, maybe. What do you think?
Well, we must work together because we are part of the same world and the same value chain when it comes to travel. In WTTC, we are calling both governments and private sector to overcome this crisis together, and we are working every day on it. We have been calling for an international coordination, and because we are going to be losing otherwise 144 already impacted million jobs. We all know about the social impact, how our beautiful sector is permeating the entire society. I want to give a couple of examples of what we have been doing, developing, for example, with objective to rebuilding the confidence among consumers. We have been working on developing the safe travel stamps, recognition for the destinations, and with our members. So we have already more than 145 destinations. That was an initiative that we started to develop at the beginning of the pandemic. And of course, very important, the G20 tourism ministers meeting that we recently organized alongside and requested by Saudi Arabia, where we presented our 100 million jobs recovery plan. Yeah, it was like unique. We make history there for first time, putting private sector discuss with the ministers for them to understand each other, how we should be working, public and private, to accelerate the recovery. This conversation is going to continue now in La Palma in November with the leadership of the Minister of Spain. it's very important that private sector as well between themselves, they have been united more than ever. They can compete out there when the time comes, but now it's time for them to work alongside one each other. And of course, we need to form strategic partnerships with health organizations to be able to have a harmonized, coordinated, collaborative and transparent approach when it comes to implement our coordinated relations across the world. So we are here to support, to be part, to work together. And of course, we speak different language, but that's the beauty of being working with different people and different organizations.
Thank you, Maribel. Myself, I'm president of a tourism office in the Pyrenees, and I know that even at the local level, there is a difficulty to work together, I mean, private and public sector. And this is addressing the whole chain, the all people, and in the region is the case, and after, in other places it's the case. So I think it's key because the empowerment of this chain of tourism is given by the solidity of the chain, and I think that it is not enough solid. Ramsey, travel has always played a role in risk mitigation, even if just through soft power. Will the lack of the drastic reduction in travel affect global stability? Can we find a way or new ways to use travel to alleviate pressures between countries and even improve the human condition? I think it's more and more important in a fragmented world that we can see everywhere, every day at the television.
Well, if COVID-19 had wiped out anything, it did not wipe out political tension amongst nations. And we all must agree that tourism is a main and major instigator of peace amongst nations. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, tensions are all over the world. Unfortunately, the pandemic, if anything, has created an aura of closedness rather than openness, and this is what needs to be changing ASAP for the sake of nations, for the sake of peace, and also for the sake of the travel industry, of course. Now, I don't know, I don't want to get too much into the social psychology of it right this moment, but we saw where every nation started looking out for itself. Every country started worrying about itself. Cross-border cooperation, if you like, multilateral cooperation was also affected. And what we need to do now is the exact opposite of this. And this is in reiteration of all of what our colleagues just said on all fronts. In order for all nations to be fine. So the mechanisms that have to be created are mechanisms that have to result in win-win scenarios for everybody. Everybody is going to need tourism in order to support their economy. There is no question about that. So how is that going to be done without cooperation and coordination? They are going to have to talk. They are going to have to open borders. They are going to have to create the mechanisms for the proper flow of people, and all of that has to be done in an environment of trust. Now, and we are going to have experts on board who are going to discuss all of these things. In May, we will most likely have the Secretary General of NATO to talk about smart power, to talk about soft power. This is it. This is going to be the big headline, soft power. How are we going to cooperate in order to take care of our own business? and how are we going to have to create the win-win scenarios? There will be people who have to present solutions. On my panel, I'm going to have several people who are going to present solutions, actual practical solutions, solutions that utilize technology or utilize multilateral mechanisms that are going to have to be in place. I'll give you an example. Akemi Tsungawa from Japan, she's the CEO of Bespoke, is going to present to us a technological solution that informs people, travelers at airports, of all of the procedures, everything that they need to know about their trip. This kind of solution achieves or creates trust. And this is extremely important during this phase and in the new in the future phases. Obviously, also Dan Richards, CEO of Global Rescue, is going to also be there in order to talk about emergency evacuation services, etc. So we are talking about practical solutions like that. And we also have ministers and experts. Haytham Matar from Saudi Arabia is going to, Saudi Arabia is undergoing a major transformation in tourism. And we're talking about mega tourism are being built. That project started before COVID-19, and that project has to continue. Again, his insight and what Saudi Arabia is going to do to protect its billions of dollars investments in tourism under the circumstances would be very, very, very interesting. We have experts in crisis management, also such as Dr. Lee Miles from Bournemouth University, who is going to also talk about solutions. So it's all about solutions, and we all have to agree, and we all have to adopt mechanisms that are multilateral mechanisms, multinational mechanisms, rather than just local. Obviously, there is a huge amount of work that has to be done at the local level. And these local measures may be different from one state to another because reality is different. But without the multilateral, without the multinational mechanisms that have to be agreed upon and established, we would just not be successful. Did I answer your question, Christian?
Perfectly, because you put the tourism at the right level, one of the highest, and this is certainly an issue for all of the governments to go on with tourism travel, because there is no reason to have peace without it. You're perfectly right. It's a matter of life, I'm sure. I have one more question for you, and then some Q&A. I have some question from the chat, but before the chat, it's the same question for all of us, but I need a very, very quick answer. How do you see yourself? It's more personal. How do you see yourself influencing industry change? Do we all have to leave our comfort zones to achieve it? So, Ramzi, you're at the stage. Go on.
There is no question to me, Christian. Communications. The next phase is just gonna have to be a lot of communications, Christian. Why? Because you have all of the local measures that we discussed. They have to be communicated at the local level, but they also have to be communicated at the international level. And then we have to communicate all of the packages, all of the mechanisms, if the restrictions, and obviously the less restrictions, the better flow of tourists. And when we're talking about sustainability, that alone requires a huge amount of educational material on how do I behave as a tourist who is visiting this site or going to that site. For the locals, how to to deal with tourists, etc. So, and I'm a communicator. I'm a journalist, and that's what I do for a living. And I can see how big of a challenge, because we need to be convincing. And the best way to be convincing is to actually communicate the truth. And this is a responsibility that has to be put on both the public and the private sectors. So if we are transparent, the more transparent we are, the more trust factor we get. So it's not just about talking positive. As journalists, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are playing our proper role here. We are communicating the truth for the purpose of transparency, but also for the purpose of educating both the public and private sector on the negative, not just the positive. This is personally where I see our role in today and in the near future, and maybe we also have to think outside of the box, because it's not just about communication. There is traditional and there is new media. There are so many ways to communicate, and we have to find new mechanisms also, so that maybe we are more effective than usual under the crisis.
Thank you, Ramzi. Thank you. What about you, Claire?
Well, just to take on what Ramzi said there, I mean, I believe that our role sits absolutely outside of the comfort zone, whether that's talking about our readers, who, you know, my job is absolutely to remove them from their sofa on a Sunday afternoon and transport them via inspiration, you know, all around the world, and give them, you know, that to inspire them to travel. But equally, you know, in our role as quality journalists, is to ask the difficult questions. You know, we've spent a lot of the last year lobbying and campaigning and trying to raise awareness, and as Ramzi says, to ask the difficult questions, to get the truth, to translate that into fact and advice and expertise for our readers, to highlight the issues faced by the industry, and to educate governments, and to get them to understand what the travel industry is facing and what we need to do globally to get that moving. So you know, change starts with you know, with greater understanding, and so in terms of inspiration and thought leadership, you know, we sit absolutely outside of all of those comfort zones, and that is absolutely our role going forward.
Thank you, Claire. Alessandra, UNWTO is certainly a platform for communication. So what is your personal insight, not the one for UNWTO, but what can you do personally?
Well, more than a platform for communication, I would say we are the United Nations for Tourism, and there's no more need for that, in the sense, the essence of the United Nations, helping our member states and beyond. How do I see myself? Now, first of all, as Claire and Ramzi said, we're all out of our comfort zones. We're out of our comfort zones even doing these type of virtual events all the time, because this is like the biggest shift in our lives as well. And as much as we change, other people do. Now, there's the way that I see myself. I have to say, in the moment, I don't see myself detached from the amazing group of people that I am so lucky to share work with, just because work has now become really my life, because that's what I do day and night. That's what we do day and night. From the moment the crisis comes on, the United Nations wear their blue helmet and just go out there and help. So the way that I see the future going forward, and the biggest impact where I can humbly play a contribution role supporting the leadership of my Secretary General, is advocacy for tourism. We have an open door. Finally, European institutions are getting awake, for example, about the fact that tourism is dramatically important because it generates so much GDP, so many jobs, direct, indirect, and this has to be preserved. Otherwise, is a total disaster. Then togetherness, continue humbly holding hands with everybody, trying to pull people together, trying to find the common path for all of us. And third, to protect those that are unprotected at the moment. We have recently initiated what we believe being a milestone initiative, which is the creation of the International Code for the Protection of Tourists. We feel that at the moment, another way to rebuild trust is also to ensure that people, once they resume travel properly, they're actually protected. So there's so many aspects of this, and I'm just incredibly lucky, even though very tired like all of you, to be part of the journey.
Thank you, Alessandra. Oliver, you're more in connection with the B2B and with the acknowledging the different enterprises, but your role is very crucial. What do you think about your role in communicating in the involvement you can have personally on this purpose?
Yeah, thank you. And so we are working with, some larger DMOs right now. Like South Africa was mentioned. We're working with South African Tourism, CISA and his team to put together their transformational tourism strategy, working with Canadian destinations, a bunch of Middle Eastern destinations. I think we as an industry, us as a company, 2031, and me as an individual in that company, as a partner in the company, I think we need to ask the question, why does tourism need to return? And we have not effectively answered that as an industry, which means it's very hard for us to convince governments, residents, and consumers why tourism needs to return. If we are thinking tourism needs to return at least for the sake of tourism, it's explorative, it's transformational, we really need to dig deeper and answer that, the reason why. Before COVID, we were very much like tourism is a right and it's a human need, and tourism is engaged in peace building and it's a multilateral exercise, and let's just do it. But we have not had tourism, from a substantive point of view at an international level for 9 months now, and our world has still managed to go on. And some aspects of our business and our society has actually done well, and other aspects have not done well. We need to figure out what aspects of tourism help where it needs to and mitigates where it should. And unless we ask that as an industry, then we will continue to go back down that rabbit hole of thinking it's the glory days of 2019 and let's think of brands and let's think of marketing and let's just do it because we want to have tourism for the sake of tourism. Tourism is not a right. Tourism is a privilege, and we in the industry are the first people that need to believe that, because otherwise consumers and communities won't.
I love this. This tourism is a privilege. Really, it's one what I have in mind, and I am to remember. Debbie, what about you? Your role is of course communication, but your personal role within your job is certainly particular because you're connected with a lot of destinations and tourism actors. What do you think of your role?
Well, first of all, I'd say, you talk about a comfort zone. I'm not sure there is a comfort zone anymore. I think that was obliterated in March. And I believe that the key to influencing change is all about collaboration and honesty. There's been a lot of talk about trust, and I think that goes back to honesty from a communication perspective. I think there needs to be collaboration on a global level, and that's something that Gloria and her team have been consistently talking about from their messaging perspective right from the beginning of the crisis. But I think collaboration and honesty is critical with both customers and media. So personally, I'd like to really build on the collaborative approach of sustainability communication. And a great example of something that I've seen is from Intrepid Travel. They're one of our clients, and the CEO, James Thornton, was due to be on my panel and will be in May, maybe even in person. But if you look at what they've initiated in the last few months in terms of sharing their experiences, so they have come up with their peers, they've come up with a great 10-step quick start guide to decarbonize your travel business. And that is them sharing their experiences as a B Corp company and as a tour operator that have long been embracing sustainability with every other player in the industry to help them move along with them. And at the same time, they've also been talking to their current travelers and future travelers, and they've come up with something called the 5 Foundations for the Future of Travel. Plus, of course, they've announced that they're going to be the first tour operator with verified science-based targets. So I think they're a great example of how the message can be spread to media. I think one of my personal challenges is to work with our clients and our industry partners to spread this message to the media that do not have that in-depth knowledge and don't care perhaps as much as some of the media that we do work with on a regular basis. And I mean, Claire and I work together really closely, and Telegraph has always cared about sustainability. But I think we've got an education job to do in terms of how the world is changing, how customers are demanding more of a sustainable and responsible tourism experience, and how that can actually benefit businesses financially. Everybody needs to recover, but actually if you embrace sustainable tourism, you can still be profitable. And again, Intrepid is another great example as they lecture about that. And I think it's, as they say, it's not about where we travel, but how we travel.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes, how we travel is really the issue. We have some time for two questions. I've selected one for Maribel. Do you believe leisure travel will recover sooner than business travel?
Yeah.
It's from the chat.
And you missed me in the last bit, but that's fine. I can consider that. I know. In the last bit, the question about the comfort zone. That's fine.
Oh yes, Maribel.
Travel,
yes. Give you also your insights about your role. Yeah, of course. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. I cannot. No problem at all. Business travel needs to recover because we need to resume international travel to be able to do all our work, and because we depend a lot of billions of jobs depends of all our work. Of course, it's not going to be from one day to the other, but that's why we are working together to try to implement alongside the governments the test on departure, the corridors, and those activities. For example, would be probably a visible me being able to be going to Évora and to meet each other and to have a proper conversation. So it will recover, will take some time, but will be recovered first, of course, domestic as well. We have been analyzing in our future of travel report, and I invite you to go and have a look to it, the behavior of the tourists and destinators, the evolution, demand, the new ways of traveling, and you can find them a lot of things. And one of the things that we have found is that the traveler preference has shifted now to the familiar, predictable, and trust places, But business travel will recover for sure.
Oh, thank you, Maribel. Yes, business travel will recover, maybe not at the same level. That's maybe the issue. There is another question. I think it's.
It will be adapting.
And what about your role? You personally, what we can do as an executive in WTTC and personally for the communications. What is your role? Certainly.
Yeah. No, it was funny because you were telling before the comfort zone. Well, I have been working many years in airlines and hospitality, so I don't know anything about being comfortable in my role because it never happened. But and as an industry, travel and tourism has been always going through very challenging and difficult times. So we're quite sure about that. Personally, I don't like to talk about personally because we are all a team and we have even taken a lot of change in our roles to be able to support our members. But what we have been doing is taking the responsibility, taking the leadership, and taking the reins to help and governments. We have been creating over the last month protocols. I have said letters to governments to be able to share with them the needs of the private sector. And the need of having a common framework to work. We are very flexible for that, as you know. And what we have been doing is, as Debbie mentioned, we have been creating a weekly task force where we share the best practices. We are here to share. It's not about competition. It's about what we can do better together. We have been inviting every single government, every single destination, and of course, WTTC members and partners to be able to share what they are doing to avoid repeating the same in the case of, for example, when Europe was opening in the beginning, the borders, and Latam, for example, we were doing a lot of events, but they should be doing differently. We have been as well doing the G20 meeting, the letters to governments. So we are very proud of that activity that we have been doing. Me, as I'm responsible for the members' relations, but right now, me, the team, and the Gloria's leadership, we have been really focused to support our members under the crisis and advocate for in behalf of them for governments.
Thank you, Maribel. And then I have one last question from the audience. Maybe for Alessandra, I guess. How can youth participate in national policy making that utilizes tourism for peace? Alessandra, you can answer this question.
Christian, I have to admit, I didn't understand what the question was.
The question is,
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. If you can kindly repeat it.
The question is, I guess, the question is, how can you make the people, the young people, participate in a national policy or international policy making to move forward tourism to peace?
Well, that's a very complex question. Whoever is asked it must be a young person. So definitely what we do is, and recording also was Ramsey was saying, with the tourism being a workforce for peace as well, definitely at some point we need to start including younger generations in the conversation. I don't know if you remember, just before the explosion of the pandemic, everyone was thinking about Generation Z and how do we actually target them? And the new Chinese, upmarket segments, very young and educated. What are we going to give to them? What language are we going to speak? So we all started focusing on the language of social media. We all started focusing on, how we can actually target those people. So it was more from a demand offer perspective. Definitely younger people need to be part of the younger of the larger audience when it comes to policymaking, because whatever we're building now, whatever sustainability choices we're making now, whatever innovation we're bringing in now, we're fostering now, it is for them. And this is why I have to say that I'm very proud, once again, in UNWTO, we have a very strong innovation and digital transformation strategy, which has focused for all these years on the creation of a healthy startup ecosystem. Startups are mainly created by young people. And what we do is we give them the possibility to actually think larger and better, to seed them and to give them the courage to move forward. They are our future more than our target.
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you, all of you. This panel was very rich. It outlines what we are going to discuss in May in Guevara, and I thank you faithfully very much. We are now fully aware that this is not only a crisis, this is a revolution, and as a Frenchman, I can guess I know what about revolutions are. But the changes will be demanding, and thanks to this transformation, travel and tourism will come out stronger. And don't let general bashing dictate the future of the travel industry. It comes first to the professionals, to the territories, and to the population. Now it is time for a conclusion. Welcome, Daniela. You are going to animate a word for travel with me in Guevara. Daniela, the Global Travel and Tourism Resilience Council, has joined our initiative. The more we work together, the more it makes sense to go forwards hand by hand. What are your feelings about it? Can you move your mic on? Still, it's still not working, Daniela. Oh, boy, well, maybe they are going to fix it. I can tell. I can give some insight because we cannot hear you. We can see you at least, and I know what you have in mind, of course, because we're working together. We have been working together for so long months, and we know that we are going to work together afterwards. And I think that this collaboration makes that we became friends, and we for sure we aligned the Resilient Council expectations with the one of the Awards for Travel expectations, and that's why we are working so well together. Can you? Yes, you can shake your head to say yes. And unfortunately, I'm sure that in the future, these collaborations between people that are not working together at the very beginning creates something new, something more relevant that in interview that we can have in Awards for Travel in Evora. And I'm sure that Evora will be one event that is very special. And I guess I replied to a question from Guillaume. What about Evora? It's a 360-degree view of tourism, but not for the very future, but for the very near future. We have to transform ourselves, of course. I'm sorry, Daniela, that we couldn't hear you. It's a pity. So I am going to the conclusion now. I want to remind you this virtual conference is recorded. You will find the link on the website awardsfortravel.org and on Residence Council as well. We are fully focused on May 10th and 11th to take initiatives, give insights, allow speakers to share their thoughts through interviews. During these 5 months ahead, we will give all of you the opportunity to provide new solutions, new attitudes for the recovery of travel and tourism industry for the good of humanity. Thank you all, and see you in Evora.